If the Utah Utes want to make the college football playoff, they don't need to just win these next 3 games. They need to absolutely embarrass their opponents.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into our show, make sure you like and subscribe. My name is JT Wistrcill, and welcome to Locked On Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can download today. Excited to be joined on this show by Moose Bingham, a former Utah kicker and a recruiting guru as well. Does a great job covering the high school football landscape as well. We'll get to that a little bit later. Some recruiting news, talk about KYLE Whittingham's press conference. But first, I was thinking about Utah and their chances at the college football playoff earlier, Moose. And as I look at the standings and I look at the teams behind them, and I look at the fact that, hey, you have a Notre Dame team that's ahead of Miami, despite Miami having that head-to-head win. Why is Notre Dame ahead of Miami? Because Notre Dame looks so impressive and they're dominating these teams they play. I truly believe that if Utah wants to make the college football playoff, which they can still do as a 2-loss team, I believe, even without a Big 12 title appearance, they're just going to need some things to happen. They have to not just win these next couple games. If you squeak out wins against Baylor, Kansas, Kansas State, who I could argue, like in no order, are the 3 most disappointing teams in this conference in some ways. I think Utah needs to win all of these games by 10 plus, or at least 2 of the 3 of them by 10 plus. And it'd be nice if we could get a couple more of just like blowouts in the mix. This Utah team needs to look head and shoulders to me better than their next few opponents if they want a shot to crack the 12-team field coming up when the final rankings are revealed, Moose.
Yeah. So where you look at Utah right now, they're ranked 15th in the country. And here's how it is. There's 11 other teams that are.
Didn't you just go on the AP poll on the college football playoff rankings? They're 13, my friend.
Oh, I went on the AP poll. I apologize. So they are 13 in the country, but there's 11 other teams that are 7-2 right now. Mm-hmm. And so what we got to look at is with these 11 other teams, who are these other teams going to play? Can we get above them? And what's going to happen with that? So I have to look at all of those things with Utah, but Utah very favorable at 13 in the country right now. And that's why I'm excited. That's why I've got my rally cap on, because we've got to get these 3 wins. If Utah goes in at 10-2, they're a very respected program. And I don't see the college football playoffs putting in like 6 SEC teams, but I think 1, 2, or 3 Big 12 teams could sneak in this year because the ACC looks weak, honestly. There's going to be a team from the ACC that may be 8-4 and make the playoffs. You're going to have your group of 5 team that makes it. So then you've got the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC vying for those last spots. And I could see Big 12 getting 3 teams in, and I could see Utah being that 3rd team sneaking in.
I absolutely could too. There's a world where BYU Tech win out and they're both in Arlington. Then regardless of who loses the championship game, you're not losing a 1-loss regular season team out of the playoff, no matter who that is in that title game. And then, like we said, Utah just keep dominating and you can get in. There's obviously still a path for Utah to make the Big 12 title game too. What's also very interesting, Moose, is I'd be very curious to see how Utah would do in a rematch against Tech. Tech is clearly the best team in the Big 12 right now, but Utah did do pretty well against Baron Morton. Like the last time they saw him, Hammond was the one who gave them a lot of issues. This Utah has improved. Tech is improving. Morton's getting more healthy. Texas Tech would be favored in that game, but I'd be curious to see how Utah would do there. But I also can say this, and I'm curious your thoughts, Moose, because you've watched both games now too. I came away more impressed with Utah in their game against Tech than I did BYU in their game against Tech. One was on the road, sure, but I do feel like Utah has looked more impressive, and including that loss as well too. So that's why if BYU does lose again, I expect BYU to drop to like 12 in the rankings coming up here. Maybe they'll stay above a Texas and Oklahoma. I think they're really going to fall because they're going to get penalized for squeaking out some of these wins, going back to what we talked about off the start of this show. So I feel like Utah is in a really good position to be better than BYU. In a lot of ways, they have looked more impressive than the Cougars overall in the season, even though BYU's got the head-to-head.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing with what's going on. Even though BYU does have the head-to-head, we just saw with Miami and Notre Dame, what these teams look like in the future is really interesting. Injuries come into play. A lot of different things are coming into play right now where it's like maybe Utah wasn't at their strongest against BYU. Spencer Fano was sick in that game. He could barely walk, and he gave a valiant effort. But there were some things that definitely went BYU's way on that game, and they deserved the win. They got it. But beating a team twice is extremely difficult. It's so hard. And I don't know if Tech can win twice against Utah or BYU, whoever's that other team in the championship game. But I still think Tech will deserve a spot in the college football playoffs. I really, truly believe that you may have 3 10-2 teams when everything's said and done, or 11-2 teams when you look at the college football playoff. And those 2 losses, which team do you take? Do you take a BYU? Do you take a Utah? Do you take a Texas Tech? I don't know. And that's going to be an interesting thing for the college football committee to talk about.
Yeah, I think this committee is willing to look like, obviously for Texas Tech, they know that Will Hammond, the game that they did lose, the Texas Tech did lose to Arizona State. Like, Hammond was the backup in, so you didn't have Morton in there too. You look at Utah's loss to Tech, and Dampier, even though he wasn't listed on the injury report, clearly not the same player. And if he continues to stay healthy and look dominant over these last few games, I think the committee can clearly look at a Utah team and go, oh, they're a much better team right now than they were by the last time they played too. And, just some of the things that Utah needs to happen in order for some of these teams in front of them to drop. Like, you need a Texas and Oklahoma to lose. Well, Texas and Oklahoma have very losable games on their schedule. Alabama, I'm sure is excited for their rematch with OU coming up too. Texas has the game at Georgia this weekend. I think they're going to lose that. I think Georgia's looking impressive there too. Notre Dame stumbling would help. I think Notre Dame's probably going to take care of Pitt and drop Pitt out of the rankings this coming weekend. But like we said, there's a path for Utah, and that's all you can ask for at this point in the season too, when you are a 2-loss team. But this Utah team just looks so dominant right now. Moose, I mean, these last 2 games, they're not just beating these teams. Cincinnati's a good team. I actually think that is a top 25 team. I just think they got caught in a storm up in Salt Lake City. What's changed to you with this Utah team post BYU, honestly?
Well, Utah, they're realizing their back's against the wall. Mm-hmm. It's win or go home for Utah each and every week. And some of these other teams don't feel that. Utah is like, we have to play our best. We have to execute. And we have to send KYLE Whittingham possibly out on the biggest high he can possibly have. And so there's a lot of pressure on these guys to do that. And I don't think there's going to be anything that stops them in these last 3 games. Utah has a clear-cut path to get where they need to. And they easily could be in the Big 12 championship game. They just need one other team to stumble.
Mm-hmm. They absolutely do need one of these teams to stumble. And I think, honestly, I think at BYU, I think at Cincinnati, I don't see them not losing another game in conference play based on how those teams are looking right now. And I feel like Utah is set up to go undefeated these final 3 games. But how does KYLE Whittingham feel about his team's chances? And what else did he reveal to us in his weekly media press conference? We're going to tell you in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. College football is back, college basketball too, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's simply nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at the checkout. It's all a massive headache. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is really what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about a P4 college football game this year for under $10. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I also love the zone deals. Picking the section, you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, you save big. You can take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. Moose Bingham back with me here. Moose, KYLE Whittingham gave an update on a Smith Snowden on the offensive side of the ball and some other updates that we'll get into in a moment. He was asked like, hey, what's going on with some of the defensive guys on the offensive side of the ball? And he said that right now they like what they have with some of these other guys out there and what they've been able to do. So like a guy like Daniel Bray's emerged, so you don't need to see Smith Snowden as much there. There's times Lander Barton, Jackson Benny will still be there, but not likely as much of a Smith Snowden, which I'm good with because I thought Smith Snowden was his best attribute isn't his like take the top off of defense speed. That's what Utah really needs. His best attribute was his speed and ability to make guys miss. Daniel Bray has done that very well. To me, you still need Jackson Benny because especially with Tobias Merriweather banged up, but honestly, Tobias Merriweather also just hasn't been that effective this season. You still need that deep threat. Lander Barton still gives you good size at the tight end position because let's be honest, JJ Buchanan, he's not blocking much out there, right? He's been productive, but he's pretty light. So he's not going to be throwing around a lot of defensive ends out there. Lander Barton can do that more effectively. So I like that Utah still sprinkling these guys in on the other side side of the ball, but it is nice you've had a guy like a Daniel Bray step up. And obviously Ryan Davis has just been incredible for this Utah team this year.
Yeah, here's the deal. Daniel Bray has been a breath of fresh air. I mean, no one really expected him to come in and do these end arounds and have the speedy, like we knew he had the speed, but he's so elusive. He's so explosive. And if you don't have to use Smith Snowden, if you don't have to use these guys, that's a much better situation. Honestly, the more people we can get to row the boat, the better off we're going to be. And we saw that with Lander Barton when he got targeting penalty against BYU. You didn't lose one player. You lost two. And so that becomes really detrimental, especially late in the season when if one of these guys, something like that happens, you're just like, oh crap, what do I do? And so with this, I'm getting excited because I'm sitting here. I'm like, okay, Smith Snowden doesn't have to go both ways. We can sprinkle him in if needed, but I'm so excited for Daniel Bray. I love what Jason Beck is using him for and how creative the offense has been. We don't have a real number one receiver, and Jason Beck is still dialing up some incredible situations and getting guys in the right spots to make plays.
That's interesting you said that because Ryan Davis is clearly this team's best receiver, but he's not your prototypical number one receiver, right? Like going on the outside, just throw it up to him. He'll make a play. Is that what you're saying, Moose?
Yeah, I don't think we've got that prototypical Z receiver where you're like, okay, we have to win a one-on-one. If there's cloud cover, it doesn't matter. We're throwing the ball up. Let's get it done. Well, who's going to blow the top off the defense and do all those things? But could they grow into it? Yes. But going into the season, I didn't think we had a prototypical number one receiver.
No, you don't. And like you said, Jason Beck, I do think Ryan Davis is a really good player, but I also agree with your point, Moose. Like there are certain players that they're in the perfect system for them and they're maximizing their value in this system. Like I don't know if other places they'd go and they'd be as successful. There's actually a lot of guys probably on this Utah team you could say that about because Jason Beck, Morgan Scallery do a great job developing and putting their guys in position to succeed. Ryan Davis is one of those guys. He's got 650 yards. He's a really good player, but I don't know if he is on just any team he'd walk into and have 650 yards. Once again, Ryan Davis, really good player, but like you said, you can't just line him outside and have him make play after play. One guy who has been making a lot of plays for this Utah team in the running game is WAYSHAWN PARKER. And Coach Witt was asked about the backfield, and he said, hey, WAYSHAWN is really good back and is really starting to hit his stride. Like I said, post game, he's really separated himself as lead back. Moose, I felt like he's been the best back all year long, and Witt's been, we haven't seen separation between him and Naquari. And I really like Naquari Rogers, a good player. Like, why was WAYSHAWN not RB1 from the start? Because the yards per carry all season long have been by far and away the best of all the Utah backs.
Yeah, I feel like he was dealing with some kind of undisclosed injuries and really getting his feet under him. But with him, you get to see a kid that came in, he stuck with his running back coach, and I love watching his game. That's the cool thing with really college football now. Kids are committing to coaches, and they're going with that coach all over. And so I love watching what they're doing with WAYSHAWN, and he's very much entrenched himself. He has really taken his time to get there, but Whittingham, it's smart of him to say, hey, there's still a little bit of a battle. We don't want to lose anyone else to the portal, So let's pump everyone up in that room because everyone has been doing good in the Utah running back room, honestly. Marquis Ottawaya, I feel like that was an unheralded get for the offensive side of the ball, but he's done a great job with Rogers, with Parker. I mean, even Duke is pretty good. And so I'm looking at this running back room. I'm like, this is an elite running back room. And who wouldn't want to run behind 2 first-round draft picks at tackle and then 3 other at least NFL camp bodies?
I love that you went to the offensive line because this was Coach Witt didn't ask about this, but I am thinking about this as we talk about this Utah offense, this Utah team. Like, why are they so successful? Why are they absolutely annihilating these teams? They're like plus 140 in point differential since the Tech game, actually. So even the loss to BYU, right? You lose that one by 3. You look back, West Virginia, Arizona State, Colorado, Cincinnati. It's just been absolute dominance, and you're getting some of these teams that, like an Arizona State, still went on the road and or just beat an Iowa State team. They later on down the road they beat a Tech team. So there's still talent on that team, even if a Sam Leavitt as his availability obviously isn't there right now for this team, and that they're missing his absence. But to me, if you're saying what's the number one reason Utah's dominating teams, I truly believe it all circles back to just how good this offensive line is. WAYSHAWN Parker is a really good back. 7 yards per carry. He's not getting that behind just any offensive line. The reason the Utah defense is feasting right now is because the Utah offense is so efficient in their ability to run the ball and no one can stop them. They build up leads. And if you get a lead, Morgan Scalley can just cook up the craziest pressures you've ever seen. That as Caden Salters, Colorado QB, up at a press conference talking about how, hey, I spent 10 hours studying their blitzes, like studying this week, and I had no idea what was going on. I truly believe the offensive line is the key to why we are seeing this Utah team dominate opponents. Because yes, they've lost the 2 best teams they've played, but this level of domination against P4 teams, we haven't seen this in a little bit, Moose.
No, I don't think you've ever seen a stretch like this from Utah. I can't recall in my life, honestly. But here's the deal. This offensive line is really gelling, and I feel like you could run for at least 5 yards a clip right now. And that's just what's amazing with it. I'm like, okay. And what's really incredible is that Jason Beck realizes that. You're finding so many creative ways to get touchdowns. You're seeing so many creative ways to get different guys involved in the game. I mean, honestly, Devin Dampier is doing good, but what he did with Bird Ficklin in that night game, I was just like, Bird Ficklin looks like an absolute dog, you know? So it's really awesome to see how Jason Beck has improved from Syracuse to New Mexico to here at Utah, and how his offense is just so explosive, so incredible. And the people that they've brought in, and they kept the offensive line coach too. So it wasn't just, hey, let's bring in the right people. It's let's keep the right people at the right positions as well.
You mentioned me being able to run behind this offensive line 5 yards. I feel like I could. And that's not anything about my athletic ability. It's because of the movement they generate up front. That's why if someone asks like me, and this is a total aside thing, but like if someone says, hey, could you rush for a yard in the NFL? I think it all depends on the offensive line, right? I mean, where do you stand on that whole debate?
I think it could be a yard, but you really need a great offensive line. But here's the problem. When you get into the NFL, there's fantastic defensive line.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
When you've got like Kyrus Tonga as a backup that's 6'3", 330 pounds. You've got Vea sitting right there. And if you had Vea on Kelsey, like that's a tough task right there. So if you were sitting there in a spread formation and they didn't know it was going to be a run and they had to think for a split second, maybe you could get a yard.
I didn't say I wouldn't leave the field like without needing help to be hobbled off because if Vita Vea tackles me, but I said I could maybe get a yard. You know who's gotten a lot of yards with this Utah team this year, Moose, is Devin Dampier. This was kind of overlooked in the Cincinnati game. I thought that might have been the most impressive he looks throwing the ball considering the caliber of the opponent. That wasn't UCLA. That was at the time a top 20 Bearcats team. Where are you at with Dampier right now? I feel like he's playing really good at the right time and was another piece of the puzzle for this Utah team that I think is going to keep their momentum rolling into 3 wins down the stretch.
Honestly, the best ability is availability. Utah coming off a bye this week. They should be healthier. They should be able to do what they need to. And I think this is a fantastic time for Utah right now because it used to be week 9 or week 8. Utah was kind of just sluggish, especially in the Pac-12. Now it's like, hey, we've got a break. We're ready to make a run. Let's do this, gentlemen. Because all of those bumps and bruises, they should be healed after 14 days off.
They should be healed. And this Utah team is ready to roll right now. And the Big 12 is a wild conference. Recruiting stuff going on, a Baylor game ahead. There's still a lot more to discuss on this episode of Locked On Utes in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. We got college basketball back right now, too. Of course, the NFL rolls on, and with the NBA, I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. They got Anthony Edwards back here recently, so he's trying to find his way with this group. How about over in the Eastern Conference? Can the New York Knicks keep stacking up wins? Wherever your team is, hey, let's go with football again. Utah Utes, big favorites, over a touchdown, over Baylor. I like the Utes right now. However you're leaning right now, you can head over to FanDuel, which is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moose, I feel like the Utah Utes are going to roll in Waco this week. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I think Baylor does some nice things, right? You're looking at SAWYER ROBERTSON, who leads the country in passing yards going into this past weekend, right? You got the bias, those numbers take a hit a little bit, but he's really talented. The collection of skill position, Michael Trigg, the tight end, a lot of quality receivers. There's a lot of really good things that this Baylor offense does. But the problem is they're going against a pretty good Utah defense, and Baylor has a pretty bad defense. They're the second worst team in the Big 12 against the run. That's not good when you're going against a Utah team that is the best P4 team at running the ball. Only service schools are above them right now. Utah's a juggernaut. I think Baylor will load the box, but loading the box when you don't have the adequate bodies to deal with the Utah offensive line, I just don't think it's going to work. I think this is a bad matchup. Let's not forget Cincinnati got them on the road, sure, but they blew Baylor out by 20 there. I know they just hammered UCF, but I don't think UCF's that great, honestly. I think Utah is one of the best teams in the Big 12. Like I said, I think they're the second best team in the Big 12 right now, and I think they're going to win by 10 plus this weekend. How do you see this matchup going against Baylor?
Yeah, I actually believe that as well. Here's the deal. X's and O's are great, but games are won with Jimmy and Joe's. So when you're playing this team, Utah, they're going to run the ball. But more than that, when you've got play action, when you've got creative play calling, you're going to see a lot of interesting looks. And Utah does a great job. They will run the most 6-0 line looks.
Yeah.
And Baylor's just not ready for that. That is big boy, get your chin strap ready football. And that's what Utah's going to be bringing to the game. And I just don't see Baylor keeping up. And then when you're getting hit in the mouth that many times, you just get gassed. And so I think it could be 21 points when everything's said and done.
And it's crazy is this might be the best opponent left on Utah's schedule. Baylor beat Kansas State. Let's not forget. And I like the Wildcats still. I think they're a interesting team that does some things I like. The problem for Kansas State's going to be they have to come to Salt Lake City. And Avery Johnson has not grown as a passer as they would have hoped. That's a team that's also dealing with some injuries. And this is just not the caliber of Kansas State team that I think can walk into Salt Lake City and get a win. And Kansas is another team where it's like, what, at the time, we thought they were going to be better than Cincinnati. Now they've plummeted in the Big 12 standings. Jalen Daniels, they're kind of back to being Kansas football. Like I haven't seen many people talk about that. They're back to being pretty bad. They're not the worst P4 team, but they're not very good. So I literally do feel like Utah, it goes from best to worst in terms of these opponents they're going to play coming up if you had to rank the three of them. And that's why I feel like Utah's got a really good chance, not just to win these games, Moose, but to honestly blow them out because the quality of opponent coming up, it's not great.
No, it really isn't. And that bodes well, but you can't overlook any of these opponents. They're still P4. They're still getting NIL money. They're still on scholarship. They're still phenomenal players. So I think it's going to be a wild ride, but Utah, if they can stay focused, getting to that double-digit win season is well within reach.
Yeah, and I will say a Kansas State, who we see in 2 weeks, they have a nice confidence booster this week as they get to see Oklahoma State, who I really wish Utah got to see this year too, with how they have fallen off to it. Like we said, Kansas, just they're going through it right now. So that'll be interesting couple games as it wraps up here. We talked about the Kansas State game that's in Rice-Eccles Stadium. Also in Rice-Eccles Stadium this week, Moose, are the the high school football playoffs, We got the semifinals there. We'll have the state championship the following week too. And one guy who's going to be, or actually won't be playing, is TRADEN BESSINGER, as his team was eliminated here recently. But he ended up committing to Iowa. He's not Helaman Kasuga in terms of the recruiting rankings, but was still a really good quarterback coming on strong as late. Okay, you had an interesting look there. You can elaborate on that in a moment. But Utah, BESSINGER commits to Iowa. Is this a loss for Utah? What do you make of one of the top QBs in the state leaving and not going to Utah?
Well, it's kind of crazy because we have a lot of quarterbacks not going to either program in the state of Utah right now. And so that's what's interesting to watch. But BESSINGER, he actually ended up being rated higher than Helaman in a lot of different sites when everything was said and done. And BESSINGER is a very good quarterback, 6'5", 210, 215 pounds, depending on the day. But he's not as mobile as you'd like. And so I don't see it as a loss for Utah because he doesn't fit the Jason Beck system, where Jason Beck would rather have a dual threat quarterback. And it's not saying BESSINGER isn't a dual threat quarterback, but it's just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And I think that BESSINGER is going to end up being one of the top quarterbacks to come out of the state of all time. I think he's going to have a really good career at Iowa, and I believe he's a possible future NFL draft pick. But here's the deal. You got to find the right offense that fits you. You got to be in the right system. And I don't think that our quarterback would do great at Iowa either. So here's the deal. Find the right offense that fits you, and you're going to do amazing things. And I think that's what BESSINGER did. One of my favorite kids in this state, one of my favorite players of all time. but I don't think Utah really misses out because it just wasn't a match.
You're right. It wasn't a match. I think that might have been the biggest, wildest potential thing you said on this show is Iowa's offense might actually be good someday. And I hope TRADEN BESSINGER, and I hope it works out for him. But man, it's been a rough go for them offensively. They're a good team. Like obviously they just almost beat Oregon. So I like Iowa a lot. We know Iowa in quarterback play isn't always the greatest. I sincerely hope that TRADEN BESSINGER does turn that around. Lots of other high school football playoff action coming up this week. We've talked a lot about guys to watch for, but for players left this week, like who are the guys who are playing potentially their final game in Rice-Eccles Stadium at the high school level that we'd like it if they played their next game at Rice-Eccles Stadium at the collegiate level?
Well, the hard thing is we're looking at the 2026 class. And with the 2026 class, we have the Pula twins. We have to make sure that they feel comfortable in the state of Utah. We have to make sure that they keep coming to the University of Utah because they are incredible. But a lot of these guys just are committed, and I don't see Utah flipping a lot of them. You're not going to see Benjamin in the playoffs, but you will see Isa Naliae. And Isa has been amazing.
What school? What school?
Orem. So he's played for Orem. He plays running back for him. He plays safety. He's listed as a cornerback recruit, but I think he's going to end up either at safety or running back for Utah. And he is an absolute dog. But some of the guys that you look for that aren't committed yet are really the Lehigh guys. A PJ Talkie could come in and do some nice things for Utah, or a Meredith from Lehigh as well. So the top uncommitted guys in the top 15 are those two from Lehigh. And we just got Benjamin, so that bodes well if you want to make it a team thing and bring in all three. What I've noticed in this Utah recruiting class, there's only 4 commits from the state of Utah. That's unacceptable, honestly. You have to have more kids from the state of Utah if you want to be successful. You have to own your backyard, and that's how Utah's been so successful with those Pac-12 runs. When you're getting Covey, when you're getting all of these guys from this state and then supplementing them with California, with Texas, with all these other states, that's great, but you have to own your base. And if you don't own your base, you're going to be in trouble.
Great point. And for someone who's listening to this might be saying, well, maybe the talent in 26 just isn't a great class. No, it's an amazing class. That's the problem. Bob MULITOLO, Brock Harris, both going to BYU. Mentioned Kasuga earlier. He's going to Texas A&M. And Moa is another guy. Utah was in on him, and now he's going to end up at Tennessee. So there's some really good players in this class. Utah missed on a Moose, and it's going to be interesting to see what this class ends up looking like when it's all said and done. That's where it's big that Utah, hit on a Bird Ficklin, depending on how much longer. I think Devin Dampier obviously will come back next year, but right now you feel like you got your QB of the future, but things can change quickly in the NIL era, and it's something that Utah has to be very careful about too. And Moose, one thing that I just find very fascinating right now, we were talking a little bit about this off the air, is all these college football teams right now, they're trying to find which next head coach they're going to grab, like whether it's Tulane or these group of 5 coaches. We were both sitting back just talking about how crazy it is. Sometimes you just got to hire that first-time head coach, a coordinator, like a KYLE Whittingham, who has transformed the Utah football program. What do you make of the current coaching carousel right now?
I think it's absolutely nuts, honestly. There's going to be up to 40 jobs in the group, sorry.
No, you're good. Like D1 jobs?
In the D1 jobs. But one job to look out for is Weber State right now, because we have a linebacking coach that has been at Weber State for years and years and years and years. So that's something that could come up with first-time head coaches. So look out for that. He could be interviewing for that. But what you got to focus on is what you can control, and Utah can control these next 3 games.
They absolutely can, and I can control who I have on my show. That's why I always am in trying to get Moose Bingham to come on here as well. Thank you so much, my friend. Please let everyone know the many things you have going on outside of your outstanding backdrop, by the way, which I know is real. There's the actual tree. It's got the house there and everything. It looks quite nice.
Yeah, I'm actually at my parents' house because I'm here for the high school championship games. So come out to Rice-Eccles, you guys, see some of the top talent that's going to be gracing your screens really soon, because honestly, there's about 20 kids that are major D1 players in the class of 26. And what you really need to be aware of is the class of 27 that's coming up, because 26 is great and everything. And there were some swings and some misses with that. But the class of 27, if you guys are Utah fans, this is the class where you got to hit when the iron's hot. You got to get Bodie Sparrow, Crew Jones, Ian Alessio. Camden Lapati's already committed to the Illini. Gennaro Guilford Jr., Peyton Higginson, Manasseh Brown, Diesel Dart, Jag Ione. I mean, all of these guys, you're like, oh my goodness. Titan DeJong, Sam Nada, Dieter Lotelele. I'm getting so excited for what's coming up in this next class, and you should too, because these are the future players of the University of Utah.
Is the 26 class or 27 deeper than 26? Is that what you're saying? I just don't know if is it as top heavy? Are you saying that?
They're just not committed right now.
Okay.
And so we're looking at kids that Utah still has a chance for that hasn't basically been signed, sealed, and delivered and ready to go. So I think if you're a Utah fan, you have to really recapture the state, and you're going to have to do that starting in 2027.
Is the which class would you say is better, though, 26 or 27 overall?
They're just so different. I mean, the 27 class, Bodie Sparrow is such a freak. Crew Jones,
wide receiver.
Like statistically, they're about even, and that's crazy to say right now. There's better quarterback play in the 26 class, but I think overall I'd probably take the 27 class when everything's said and done, because there's some immediate impact players ready to go.
Well, that's big. And as we said earlier, Moose, you're an immediate impact guest. Thank you for coming on, my friend. That's going to do it for Locked On Utes today. We'll be back with you tomorrow, getting you prepped and ready for the Utah Utes showdown against the Baylor Bears.